A little over $100 worth of groceries when they come through, and we put it in the back of their trunks.
Today is not just any other distribution day. The church is celebrating their 1 millionth pound of food donated for the year. Pastor Mark is thanking the team by grilling vegetarian burgers for them to enjoy.
At the end of June, we hit 1 million pounds of food that we served. Here in 2021, we're definitely on pace to do over 2 million pounds. So we just took a little time to celebrate that. We were thanking the volunteers that were there with some vegetarian burgers with caramelized barbecue on it. And so yeah, it was a good celebration just to thank the volunteers for all their work. We couldn't have done it without them.
It's not only about the amount of food served, but more importantly, the lives they are able to impact.
Another family said they were asking for prayer because they were going to be evicted from their home in a couple of weeks. It reminded me that we're serving people rights that are really on the edge of homelessness.
This food pantry in Kansas City has grown to serve many families each week, and they say their growth strategy is simple.
The more we pray, the more people God brings here. And so I would say if you want to start a pantry like this, start praying for every single person that comes through there. And as you pray for those people, God will send you more. He knows who needs prayer, and it will grow and grow and grow. But that is what has happened to us.
From humble beginnings, this church has fed hundreds of thousands of people over the last few years. Please pray for the team in Kansas City, as well as others around the world who are continually seeking ways to serve their communities with love.
So it's time for the lesson separation and a few announcements. So as usual, we have one class outside in the Maple Room with Zoom facility or meeting in person, so you're free to join. And then we have another class with Volker in Pastor Terry's office, meeting in person. Upstairs, we have in the Oak Room a young adults meeting, let's say from 16 up to 25, 26, and someone even 30. And this group is really growing, and feel free to join. It's a very big and happy group, good things happening. But one additional announcement I wanted to do is this is hopefully what we are targeting, the last format that we are running from the pulpit, because from next Sabbath we are planning to bring some of the classes back in the sanctuary in person, as it was to some extent pre-pandemic. However, what we have achieved in the last 2 years, or especially in the last 8 months, in terms of running this panel and having new people joining online, we had 30, 40 people every Sabbath watching this study online. We will continue this service, but we will broadcast from the vestry, which will open the separation with Pastor Terry's office. So we have a big room, and we are broadcasting from there. So the panel will continue to provide the service to the brothers and sisters watching online. So keep joining us, because we continue this service. But there will be classes in the sanctuary, step by step. I don't know how many next Sabbaths, but we are bringing that back. So keep joining us. And as usual, I have the microphone for the congregation and reading the messages online. Thank you.
So good morning again. I hope you can hear my voice, even if I'm sitting here. We are going to start the lesson number 5, All Nations and Babel. And I have today with me precious brother and sister, Anna, Milimo, and John. And together, and also with your collaboration, we are going to approach this study. Please open your Bible studies, if you have one with you, at the lesson number 5, and the Bible, or what you have, the tablet or your phone, at Genesis chapter 9. In the introduction of our study, the author said that in spite of human wickedness, God turns evil into good. He has, as always, the last word. The curse of Ham in his father's tent and the curse of the confused nations at the Tower of Babel will eventually be turned into a blessing for the nations. So our subject for today is to analyze how manage God to turn a curse, Ham curse, into a blessing, and also the confusion and the rebellion of Babel Tower into a blessing for all nations. So we are going to start firstly with what is told in chapter 9 about rather, I would say, strange story, embarrassing story about the man of God, Noah. So when I started the study, I considered, I know the story, that's so embarrassing. So we know everybody, Noah planted a vineyard. In a way or another, he made wine. How he got drunk, we don't know, but definitely he was drunk, showing in his tent being naked. The youngest son, Ham, have seen this, and instead of doing something properly as a son, he just gossiped the news to his brother, and probably entitled, Noah was upset and a curse was followed. So this is what I knew, and every time when I was reading the Bible, I just went quickly through this to some more important ideas. But the study this week revealed something different. And what I found out is that the story of Noah is not told for us for the sake of Noah, even not of the sake of Ham. It's someone else who is introduced into this story.
I wanted to mention that the writer of the book of Genesis, Moses, mentioned this history, this incident with Noah, the man of God, and introduced Canaan, the son of Ham, in order to prepare his readers about the gradual wickedness that was experienced up to Canaan and the land of Canaan.
Yes, so we have two references in this chapter, in chapter 9, about Ham, but always is in the context, Genesis 9:18, Ham was the father of Canaan. Then Genesis 9, verses 22, Ham, the father of Canaan. So apparently the most important figure into this history is not Noah, is not Ham, but it's Canaan. And if we are considering who is writing this, is Moses, and in what context, he was the leader of the Israel people, leading them towards what? Canaan. To the Canaan land. So we have to read this story with the whole Pentateuch, with the whole 5 books of Moses in mind, to understand why it was important for Moses to present a true story, the roots and the meaning of Canaan. Anna, what is the meaning of the name Canaan? Yeah, that's very important. Please take as close as you can the mic to be able to be heard.
Yeah, the meaning of The word Canaan means subdue. So it is through the subduing of Canaan, the son of Ham, that the descendants of Shem will enter the promised land.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So we have learned already that often in the Bible the name of a person is telling about his character, about something what happened in his life, or even is a prophecy. That's interesting that the name Canaan means subdue. Yeah. Now let's read together Genesis chapter 9 verses 25. So we are here after as I said, the strange situation happened with Noah, and Noah pronounced, after the drunkenness is gone, he pronounced a curse. And amazingly enough, the curse is not upon Ham, which actually was involved in gossip, but it's on his son Canaan. Let's read together who has opened verses 25.
And he said, Cursed be Canaan,
Yes.
a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren.
Thank you. Then let's read verses 26. The same, yeah.
He also said, this is Noah, Praise be to the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem. And may Canaan be the slave of Japheth.
Did you include 27 as well?
I did, yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, if we are reading quickly, that's it. That was the curse, that's the name subdue, and we finish with this. But in the study, we had something very, very interesting in the comments. I'm going to read out for you, and you can read also again home. It's on the page 217 in my manual. It's written like this. So we have in verse 9:25, curse be Canaan. That's definitely a curse, because it's telling. But further, the comments, it's here. What is the next words? Servant of servants. The author of our study said, the use of the phrase servant of servants is ironic. Servant of servants is a superlative, meaning the servant par excellence, and suggests a spiritual direction pointing to Jesus, the servant of servants who comes to save the world. And that's so beautiful. So we have here, the things we have here impressed me so much. So Noah started with a curse be Canaan, then curse turned into a prophecy, telling the prophecy about the servant of servants. This is an idiom in Hebrew language, and we have to accept what the scholars, what the professionals are saying about this language and the explanation. It's impossible for a human being to achieve this status, to be servant of servants. So it's turning out that it's more something spiritual here, and it's pointing to Jesus. My thoughts moved immediately on Isaiah 53, that chapters where we are told that the punishment who was for us fall upon him. upon Jesus. And I just had suddenly this revelation while Noah was talking, while his tongue was pronouncing a curse. God turned his curse into a prophecy. And the prophecy was about our Lord Jesus Christ, who was the only one capable to be the servant of servants. And it's still serving us today in heaven. And one day will be the Lord of the Lords. That's another idiom. If we are thinking in Bible of a similar expression, think about Song of Songs, which means the most beautiful song, which is the love, definitely. The Song of Songs, the Lords of Lords, the Servant of Servants. These idioms have very nice expression in Hebrew, but also in Latin, in Vulgata, and we are all familiar with this. Let's say about the Holy of Holies. There's another superlative of the holy, of the place which is the most holy in the universe. And in Latin is Sanctum Sanctorum. In Hebrew, Kadosh Ha Kadoshim. The Song of Songs, what I said before, it's in Hebrew, Shir Ha Shirim. In Latin, Canticum Canticorum. And the servant of servants in Hebrew is Ebed Abadim. In Latin, Servus Servorum. So, let's dwell a little bit with idea of someone pronouncing a curse, then is transformed into a prophecy, and further what follow in the verse 26 is transformed into a blessing. But the blessing is upon God, because is the God of Shem. And then finish up verses 26 with 27 into a prayer. And 27, it's a prayer which includes all nations. So just keep in mind this beautiful evolution from a curse to a prophecy to a blessing, then a prayer. I couldn't stop thinking myself, what if Noah would have pronounced from the beginning a prayer? Because between us, at least in our tradition, it's not as normal a parent to pronounce a curse. But it's common to say a prayer for the next generation. Please.
The curse was only a prediction of what would happen because of Ham's attitude. Noah couldn't curse somebody and have that happen to them. It was a foretelling of what would happen because of the kind of person that Ham was. You see what I mean? Noah couldn't curse Canaan and have it happen. Only God could do that. But he was saying what would happen to Canaan because of Ham's attitude, not because of the curse. We can't curse people like that and have it happen to them, but they could give a prophecy of what would happen because of Ham's attitude. You see what I mean?
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's also, I think, worth mentioning or thinking about what Ham did. In my eyes, I don't think he did anything sinful or disrespectful, but we have to to take culture into account. Back in those days, in that culture, respect to your parents was very important, and it still is in some cultures. I know in my country it's still the same, or at least when I was growing up, compared to how my kids are growing up in this country. And so while I was growing up, respect to your parents, there was no question about that. You couldn't question your parents, and we were taught to respect their opinions, their words, their everything. So in Ham's case, he should have respected his father, because his father found himself in a very weak moment. He was human, and Ham should have not gossiped about it, but tried to help his dad cover himself. But instead of that, he failed his dad. So it's we have to take culture into account. So he did not show respect to his parents.
Thank you so much. Yeah?
So along the lines of this conversation, I think it is pertinent for us to ask the question, why is this curse on Ham and not on Canaan and not on Ham? Are we saying here that the sons bear the consequence of the sins of the father? And then another question, if a curse is pronounced, how long does a curse last?
Thank you.
I would like to ask you, in a way, your question. I think the curse has an expiry date, like food has an expiry date. Curse doesn't determine the destiny of a person or of a nation, because we are dealing in the Bible with personal responsibility. And I think everybody, as an individual, is responsible for their own actions. And the curse that was pronounced by Noah to Canaan somehow was a prophecy that was highlighting the progression of sin in Canaan, from Ham, his father, to the son, to Canaan. But I think, as a conclusion for myself, everybody is responsible for their own actions. And a biblical answer to your question might be found in Exodus chapter 34, verses 6 and 7. And there we have the instance when Moses was asking to see the glory of God. And it's stated in those two verses that God is merciful, but He is also just. He is merciful to the thousands of generations, but He is just, and He is punishing the wickedness of people to the third or the fourth generation. I don't know, maybe someone else will help me more with this answer.
Yes. Thank you so much. Bible is true. But we have to observe that the Bible is not judging Noah for what he has done. Neither is not judging Ham. It's leaving to us to judge, to discuss, to compare, to understand. It's only showing us the fate of Canaan. And in the context, what we have discussed, from curse to a blessing to a prayer, I'm asking you, how can you see the blessing of God in Canaan faith, in Canaan history? That's the last question to this subject, and we are moving on to the second part. Please.
Well, I'm not addressing your question. I just want to add something to what my brother has said, pointing out Exodus 34 there. And we do see a contrast there. The curse lasts to third and fourth generation. Meanwhile, the mercies of God last to thousands of generations. And it's been said earlier, our God is compassionate. He's able to turn a curse into a blessing. And when we talk about the issue of the son bearing the sins of the father, again the scriptures makes very clear that the son will not bear the sin of the father, neither the father the son. Every man would be responsible for his own sin. And when we then think about talking about something someone has said earlier as well, The sins, visiting the iniquity of the father upon the children unto the third and fourth generation, happens when the child, the son, the daughter, continues in the line of the father. If you continue to perpetuate the sin of the father, definitely the curse of that sin will be on the child, not because the father sinned, but because the child continues to perpetuate that sin. We can see the same character that was shown in Ham being developed over time also in Canaan. The same way, if a man is sinful and the son chooses to be faithful, the consequence of that sin will pass over him. And, we see again the same thing when people talk about epigenetics now. In the world that we live in, we have come to understand how things are passed down from generation to generation. You go to the doctor, they ask you, has anybody in your family ever been diabetic? Do they have high blood pressure? Have they done this? Have they done that? Because they know. We know now, by virtue of science, that these things do come down from generation to generation, and they tell you, you are predisposed to this, and because of that, you need to live this way, you need to live that way, you need to have this kind of lifestyle, so that you do not develop the same thing. So by the grace of God, our ancestors might have, our parents, our ancestors, whoever they may be, may have virtues or they may have foibles, but we do not have to bear the consequences of their wrongdoing if we choose differently.
Thank you so much for your contribution.
I think the answer to your question that you asked to me is Rahab. You asked about the faithfulness of Canaan and how it was rewarded. Rahab, she was, what was she? A prostitute, but she was a Canaanite. Yet she's in the line of Jesus. So if the Canaanites were cursed for forever, how did that happen? Because then Jesus is cursed. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So the author of our study insists so much to see that in this chapter the story is not of the sake of Noah but the sake of Canaan. And if we consider, everybody knows that the destination, the earthly destination of Israel, people of Abraham, was the land of Canaan. Look, he was subdued, but the name remained. And Canaan was also saved through the chosen people of God, the Israel, from which later came Messiah. I cannot say that from Canaan came Messiah, came from Seth, but also there are ancestors from Canaan's side into the genealogy of Jesus as well. But was a place named Canaan, was a land from which all Israel dreamed of and remained for us. We are also talking about heavenly Canaan. We all hope to be there, and we know that it's more about relationship with Jesus, with God, but still the name remains. Let's see this blessing. Let's see how a curse was transformed by the grace of God into a blessing. And last one, and we have to move on because of the time. Please, louder, John.
I was going to say that Rahab was saving two spies when the people from Israel went to see the promised land. And later, her kindness in saving those two spies was repaid by saving her. And also in the New Testament, in Matthew 15, we can find another instance when Jesus Christ was helping a Canaanite woman to help her daughter who was demon-possessed. And he commended her faith, and her daughter was healed. So we can see instances where personal choices determine the destiny of a person, of an individual, no matter what nation they are from. This is what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much.
Before we
have to move on.
Before we move on, sorry, there's a very important question at the end of Sunday's lesson. It says, Noah, the hero of the flood, drank. So I think this is important to note that even though he was the hero of the flood, and Noah was a righteous man and he was walking with God, he did make a mistake in this instance, and I'm sure he made other mistakes, and this is a good reminder for us to always remember that we do make mistakes. We're not flawless, we're flawed and because of sin, but as long as we learn from our mistakes, that's the most important thing. As long as we are growing and we're getting better and we're making less mistakes, that's what God requires of us, because once you make a mistake, it's important to reflect on it and understand what went wrong, why you made that mistake, and be appalled by what sin does.
Thank you so much. So you can see that our Bible study is full of insight, and we can never cover everything because of our fixed 45 minutes, and this is why we have to carry on. So I said the second aspect we are going to analyze just a little bit is the Genesis genealogy. If you are like me, or at least when I was a child reading the Bible, I always went through genealogy very quickly. That was a little bit boring. I even could read properly the names, so many names, and I don't know what is with them. So why do you think still genealogy is important? Milimo, I would like to hear you.
Genealogy is important because it gives us a snapshot of where the person has come from. It tells us their origin. You talk about skipping through genealogies. I was very interested to find that Jesus doesn't only come through David, through Joseph as his adopted father, but through Mary as well. Joseph from one son, Mary from the line of the other son. And so it's important because it establishes authenticity. In my culture, if a man is going to marry a woman, they will ask, who are your parents? They want to know the line through which the person is coming. In this case, we are living so many years, so many thousands of years from when these things happen. But when we put a name to, we are talking about people, you are naming people, it makes it even more alive, more real, if you were in any doubt. And many times, the scoffers, the people of the world who don't believe in the Bible, have said, this person never existed. Guess what? The archaeologists come up with a piece of evidence that shows that that person actually did exist. So it establishes, it clears doubts in people's minds. Genealogies are important. They clear doubts in people's mind. It also shows, in the case of Bible genealogies, that there has been continuity.
Yes.
There has been an unbroken line from Adam right through to our day and beyond. So it shows that there is continuity in Earth's history. It also reminds us that we are just human beings. No one is invincible. We all are born and we die. If Jesus doesn't return, each one of us has a burial plot with our name on it somewhere. So it shows us that human life is fragile. It is not something that, when we are alive, we kind of tend to think we may live forever. We don't even want to die, But as we go through the Bible genealogies, somebody lived, was born, lived, and died. It reminds us that Like the Bible says, life is like mist. It's there in the morning. By the time the heat of the sun comes, the mist has disappeared.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So you pointed something very, very important also about the genealogy of Jesus, which is presented in Luke chapter 3, verses 23 to 38. We are not going to read everything because of the time, but maybe you remember that this genealogy is ending like the son of Adam, the Son of God, that's showing the identity of Jesus. But also our identity, if we can go backwards, generation after generation, will end also like this, the son or the daughter of Adam, the Son of God. That's the precious identity of humankind. Okay. Before moving on to the third subject and what you said and the aspect that we all have the identity of sons and daughters of God, introduces and help us to understand better the rebellion of the Babel Tower. Before going there, I'm going to be cheeky and I want to share with you something. So I told you that I was also not very keen on genealogies, on things like this in the Bible. Something like 30 years ago, a Hebrew teacher, a pastor which was also a Hebrew teacher, told us, to young people that time, that in the name of Methuselah, which is the oldest man who lived on the earth, it's hidden the prophecy about the flood that I was told. And I never checked it. But last week, when we had the flood, I remembered this. And I said, let's have a look, what is the meaning of Methuselah in some dictionary. And I Googled for that. I didn't have the right dictionary, but I Googled. And what I found, and you can Google and find exactly the same thing, that the name of Methuselah means his death will send. I was so amazed about this. And I said, let's calculate. And I did the calculation for you. Hopefully you can see it. It's all about Genesis 5. So Genesis chapter 5. There in verse 27 is written that Methuselah lived 969 years. That in verse 25, it's written that when Methuselah was 187 years old, came on the earth Lamech. Lamech was born. Then in the verse 28, when Lamech was 182 years old, Noah was born. So that means at the time when Noah was born, Methuselah was 187 plus 182 years, was 369 years old. Then we have Genesis 7, chapter 7, with verse 11. And there is written that the flood was sent, so Methuselah, when he died, will send. His death will send. The flood was sent when Noah was 600 years old. And it's a very, very simple math to add 369 of years when Noah was born plus 600 years when the flood came, and we get exactly 969 years. So in the year when Methuselah died, flood came. Maybe you can have a repeat here, just the numbers written bigger. You can find them in the Bible. So I'm asking you now, what is now the perspective of the flood? What is now the perspective of the way how God communicates with people? Definitely, if the parents put this name to Methuselah, they knew something about the flood. They knew about God's plan. So it wasn't just 120 years and poor Noah generation died without knowing. No, apparently it was about 1,000, nearly 1,000 years when they heard, when they have the time to come back to God, to reconsider their ways. That's so different. And this is making for us the genealogy in the Bible. Okay, let's move on to the last subject about the Babel. Let's read firstly Genesis chapter 1, verses 28. Yes, please.
Sorry, before we move on, just a quick point. Many of us say we shy away from learning genealogy. And I want to encourage us, because I had an experience this year working with children in the PBE. You look at 1 Kings. Well, I got to a point where I wondered, why on earth would they ask them to learn 1 Kings with all the names, with all the numbers? And there's a particular chapter 4, where you have Solomon's administration. You have all the people who served under him. You looked at the governors that he appointed, the lands they governed, their genealogy. And one session, I looked at it before the session with the children, and I said, okay, I'm going to highlight just a few places for them to learn, and we wouldn't learn everything. So in the session, these are 2 11-year-olds, and I told them that, and they said, no, Auntie, we would learn it. And I can tell you that by the grace of God, in 1 hour, those 2 children learned memorized all those names, all those genealogy, all the lands that they governed. These are 2 11-year-olds. Why am I bringing this up? There is no limit to what God can achieve in our lives and in the lives of our children if we take the time to teach them and not believe that they are too young to learn certain things.
Thank you so much, because the time is advancing. I'm going just to summarize what you know from Genesis chapter 1, 28, that the initial plan of God was for people to populate the whole earth, to take care of nature and animals, to be the Lord of the Lords in his world. Adam was a beautiful plan. And also we found out in chapter 9, verses 1, after the flood, God's intention was the same. And his plan, communicated to people, was a blessing upon them to fulfill this plan, to populate the earth, the whole earth. And what they have done with the Babel Tower, and what was wrong there. Let's say quickly to be able then to analyze God's solution for this rebellion. So what was wrong with Babel Tower? Anna or John or everybody, quickly.
Well, God instructed them to multiply and fill the earth. So after the flood, we know that the ark was rested on a mountain, and everybody was together. And Ellen White shed some light on that they were all together and they were worshiping God. But then some people decided to go down the plain, and there they decided to be united instead of because God wanted this universality. He had this plan of them covering the whole earth, and in that sense, he wanted the people to to share with everybody around them the knowledge of Him and His truth. But instead of that, they got into idolatry. They also did not trust God's promise that He would not destroy the earth with a flood again. And He gave them the rainbow, but they didn't trust His promise, so they were scared. And they thought, I would have been scared probably, and everybody else, that we don't want to be destroyed by another flood, so let's build a really high tower, and that will reach to heaven. So I think that was their logic behind what they did. It wasn't necessarily bad when I first thought about it, but I think at the end I believe that it was because they did not trust God's promises. So the actual building of the tower, it wasn't as bad at first, but I think believing in themselves and not trusting in God, that was part of the sin they committed, and they got into idolatry as well.
I see two problems there. Yes, I see two problems there. The first problem is that there was a direct disobedience of what God had asked them to do, disperse, fill the earth, and so forth. The other problem that I see is that I think there was a spirit of, the same spirit that was in Eve, when the serpent said, God doesn't want you to eat of the fruit because you will be like Him. That spirit of wanting to be like God made Eve eat of the fruit. And we see the same spirit in the people around there. They wanted to be like God. And the desire to want to be like God, we see it all the time. Even, in our current world, we see people who do things, they feel they are not accountable to anybody, they can do what they want, they can establish an Aryan race on earth, they can extinguish a whole ethnic group because they have the power. People want to play God. And that is what was there in everything about building the tower. They wanted to be able to build it and even go to the heavens itself. It says in the Bible, yeah? They wanted to be like God. The desire to be like God. Again, we want to be like Jesus, who is God, right? In righteousness, in compassion, in love. But there is also the other desire, which is sinful, which is wicked, to be like God, to be able to control others, to do what you like. Yeah. So the Spirit, two things. One, they disobeyed God. Two, they wanted to be like God.
And it's a third one as well.
Oh, there's a third one. Yes. I'll leave it to John.
Quickly, if you can say that.
Maybe unity in rebellion against God, but I think it was touched. And somehow they wanted to not follow God's plan to populate the whole earth. And it would have ended in monopoly. It wouldn't have ended in economical growth and in multiplication of the human race over the face of the earth.
Yeah, that's some of the benefits of being scattered. But it's something more what you mentioned before. Just remember, who are we? Who they were that time? All sons of God. And they wanted to change this. They wanted to make a name for themselves.
Yes.
Well, that's not possible because we are all daughters and sons of God. And they wanted to change it, to make something special, to make that tower and to make a name for themselves. And that was sinful.
We already have a name, so it's important to remember that we're all sons and daughters of God. And the minute we forget that, I think that's when we have issues. Also, in the Ministry of Healing, I would like to add, it says that our plans are not always God's plans. And that is also important to remember, for me, first of all, because sometimes we have plans which are good. They don't have to be evil. They're good plans. But if they are not God's plans, then God is going to do everything He can in His power to prevent us from achieving those plans and being fruitful, because He understands us more than we actually understand ourselves. Sometimes we fall into the trap, we know ourselves. We don't actually understand ourselves, not as God understands us fully. So it's really important to remember, I'm going to read it again, our plans are not always God's plans. And also, it continues and says, in His loving care and interest for us, often He who understands us better than we understand ourselves refuses to permit us selfishly to seek the gratification of our own ambition. And also, Ellen White continues to say that we shall see that our seemingly unanswered prayers and disappointed hopes have been amongst our greatest blessings. And I have experienced this myself, and I can say that with some things it has taken me 25 years to understand that a disappointed hope was actually a blessing.
Because time is up, I have to make a closure with one sentence. So God was against unity against God. So the people at Tower of Babel, they had unity against God. Instead of this, He promoted pluralism and scattering people around the world. He assured the liberty, the freedom of people, the freedom of choice, the freedom of thinking. Because people are treating us individually. We cannot blame at the end of the day that our leader or our pastor or our ruler of a land said this and we had to do like that. Everybody has to have a conscience. So scattering the population on the whole earth had huge benefits and remain for you to meditate. I'm just asking something. We are a diverse community. What is the benefit of this? I just heard from my sister how is the conception in his country. So coming from around the world with all kind of conception enrich us, help us to see the truth in all faces, to see the whole truth and to be saved. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Thank you for all who wanted to intervene. Please keep your thoughts for next Sabbath, and I'll start with you. Thank you so much.